Madam Mayor, it's 6 o'clock.
Did I just turn it on or off? I just turned it on, I hope. Good evening, everybody. And welcome to the City Commission regular meeting of January 4th, 2022. Yay! Happy New Year, everybody. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Mayor Betty Resch.
Here.
Vice Mayor Herman Robinson. Here. Commissioner Sarah Maliga.
Present.
Commissioner Christopher McVoy.
Present.
Commissioner Kimberly Stokes.
Thank you. Oh, now we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Stokes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I skipped Commissioner McVoy giving us the invocation or moment of silence.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Are we standing?
Okay, great. Thank you. I'd just like for us to take a moment to start this new year thinking of our goals and hopes for the new year. We start at a time of a pandemic that is making life certainly difficult. We find that this has made things more difficult in our community, partly by increasing rents and house prices. And so I'd like us just to, as a commission and staff, to think in our actions over the coming year of those less fortunate, whether through health or through financial difficulties. Let's keep in mind that we want to serve all in the community as best as we can, and we hope for guidance from whatever higher power speaks to us to help us all in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Madam Clerk, are there any additions, deletions, or
Reordering.
reordering? That's wonderful. Thank you.
I don't have anything, Madam Mayor, but before we get into the meeting, I want to apologize to the commission, city manager, assistant city manager, residents, et cetera, for a remark I made at the December 7th meeting. I'm truly sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now, I see Commissioner Robinson. It's been a couple of weeks since we've done this. I'm sort of a little rusty. Commissioner Robinson.
I just, under consent, I'd like to pull item B.
Right, thank you. I was going to do the same thing. You did it for me. Thank you. So next up is Commission Liaison Reports and.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, we need a vote on an amended agenda. So consent B will move to new business E.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So moved.
Second.
New business. Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Commission Liaison Reports and. District 1.
Okay, we'll start with District 1. Happy holidays and happy 2022, everyone. I'll take this off because there's no one near me. I'll keep it short, keep it brief. It was a great holiday season. I'm glad to be back in action. I have two things. Every day that I'm on the dais, you will see me wearing an racism shirt for the month of January. It is part of the Lake Worth Beach Interfaith Coalition and their anti-racism campaign for the month of January. So I will be loud and proud about wearing my anti-racism shirts. I'll be reading a proclamation on the 18th addressing anti-racism and racism in our city and in our county. I also had the honor to meet with Mr. Mayor Dave Kerner yesterday, who is our county commissioner and currently serving as mayor. They are approving the redrawing of the county commission lines. So I met with him yesterday. Mayor Kerner will be the majority of our representation, with the outskirts will be Greg Weiss. And then along this little pink sliver is Mr. Mac Bernard. So I had a good conversation with him, let him know that we were working on the pool casino beachfront complex,
Right.
and that we have a final workshop coming up, and that hoping that the county will partner and tell them, the funding that we had set aside. Carmen and I had our conversation today, and she is willing to go meet with the rest of the commission with me one-on-one because of sunshine. We don't want to violate that, and try to prep them for the big ask.
Nice.
That's it.
Sadly, we're still split up.
What's that?
The problem is we're still split up.
We are, but the good news is, he literally is 98% of Lake Worth Beach. So that's all I got for today.
All right, great.
Lake Worth person.
What?
And Dave is a Lake Worth.
Yes, he is.
It's long time, lifetime. Yeah,
His dad was-
he mentioned you working with his dad,
Yeah, I worked with his dad. It was in the old days.
but it was a good conversation.
Great. Mr. McBoy.
Can't hear you.
You need to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Yeah, just two items. Happy holidays and happy new year to everyone. COVID is particularly on probably all of our minds, but mine, as some of you know, Karim was diagnosed positive or tested positive mid-December. Fortunately, not too severe, but lingering, just total lack of energy. Florida's numbers were now 10th in the nation, or were at least as of this morning. It's still very much present. And even if the Omicron is not as severe, I can certainly attest that it had a very big effect on our household for a number of weeks. So I'm very pleased to see that the city has been quite proactive about putting out various forms of information on vaccination, on social distancing, masking, all those things. And I'd encourage people to get boosters. It definitely seems to be a help. There are opportunities for shots, vaccines at the Guatemala Maya Center every Friday. There are probably also other places in town, but that's one I know of. And just with that, a reminder that each person who's vaccinated is one less place for the virus to continue mutating. And that helps us all. My other topic is quality of life issues. This really continues to be something that I hear a lot from constituents. A lot of it is noise in residential neighborhoods, unwanted noise, and very much frustration that we don't, whatever the mechanism is, whether it's code or PBSO, it doesn't seem to be working very well. And I keep hearing of people who are on the edge of moving out of town because of it. So it's something that I'd really like us to try to focus on. If we need to revisit our noise ordinances or work with PBSO, whatever it is we need to do better than we're doing. Speeding is another one that people refer to quite a bit. Sometimes industrial activities in areas that are very close to residential. And then, of course, safety issues in some neighborhoods also. So those are very much on my mind as something that I hear a lot from residents about. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Stokes.
Yes, I only have two things as well. One of them is referring to COVID. I just want to encourage everybody, if they're feeling sick or having any symptoms, to please go get tested. And that goes for our staff as well. I'm hearing from in the community and reports of people who are nervous about getting tested because they don't want to be like pointed at like you're the one that has COVID and you're infecting all of us and it was like your fault. And I know from my personal life, at least 10 people that have gotten COVID over this break, and they are of every ideology, every background, every mentality, and there's no blame to go around. And but please be considerate and get tested so we can stop spreading it around. There's no judgment at all. So I'm worried about that. The other thing I know the city manager's office had requested if we had anything on our minds before our pre-agenda meeting to let them, to give them a heads up.
Yeah.
So something on my mind is the rising rents that are happening throughout South Florida. And I know we have a representative in Orlando who's calling on our governor to declare a state of emergency, and St. Pete is also looking into declaring a state of emergency to see what measures they might be able to put in, because anything we can do to prevent people from losing access to their homes is only going to make our city healthier. So if anybody on staff wants to look into that ahead of our pre-agenda meeting, that's great. If not, also great. I will be bringing it up and keeping an eye on what the rest of the state is doing there. That's all for me.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Robinson.
Yeah, Happy New Year to everybody, and looking forward to it. The Christmas parade was fantastic. Bonfires are always great. Music in the Bryant Park on Sundays, 3 to 5 is free and a beautiful place to be. The opening of new businesses in Lake Worth Beach is really, I think, a vote of confidence in our city's future. And I look forward to their success. Want to remind everybody that the NAPC, the Neighborhood President's Council, Neighborhood Association President's Council, is having a debate on the 20th of this month, January, at the Playhouse. It's a demonstration of our democracy, and it's very important that we participate. But they're going to need questions for the candidates, and the questions should come through the neighborhoods themselves, individual neighborhoods. So please participate in that. The CRA, I didn't see on this month's agenda or next month's. And I recall the CRA expecting to report quarterly to the commission. And
March.
now maybe it will be biannually,
Oh,
or
no, this is
the
January.
last time we heard from them is in 6 months ago. So do we expect to have quarterly reports or not? The L&M property still sits as a problem to the neighbors, to our development, to our budget, the CRA's budget. And the sooner we can come to an understanding that we need to address that, I think the better will be. So did I hear then CRA meeting in?
We can talk to Joan and find out if she comes. I mean, I don't think she's not objecting to it. I just think it hasn't happened.
Madam Mayor?
We had mentioned January 11th.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so I originally had it on the next agenda, January 18th, and I emailed Joan for her presentation, and she was asked to do the update at the Joint Commission CRA meeting.
But we're not, are we having that?
We're trying to schedule, we're working on dates for this month, yes.
But if we're having a regular, if our next regular meeting is the 11th, it might be 18th.
18th.
Just for her, I mean, if just for her to come in and do a quick thing rather than waiting for the, because we don't have the other one scheduled yet. I'd like to see it happen, right? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so maybe we could talk to Joan and get her in on the 18th or at the least the 1st of February.
Absolutely, I will contact her again tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Because I'd like to hear how the progress of the consultant for the L&M projects. I don't know if anybody's heard from them.
I know Joan has a very open policy. If you have questions, you're welcome to always to call.
Well,
They're just starting.
I'm just speaking for the public because I would rather hear it firsthand rather than second or third hand if I was in the public.
Okay.
And to find out what's happening with the 1213 turn, the project that they're also
Lake
working on.
Lake Avenue.
And as far as the agenda goes, agenda review, we talked, or I'm wondering whether 2 weeks in advance is maybe 2 weeks at a time. I've said 2 years goes by, and if we have issues between the deadline and our meeting, our attorney has said that we can vote on things that aren't on the agenda. I asked for a required resolution to have developers come come to the stakeholders to have meetings with the stakeholders. And I'd like to see that on a future
Mhm.
agenda. I'd also like to set a date for board appointments in the process, however we're going to do it. But we had an issue with our method. And I guess the longer it goes, the worse it seems for making appointments. And as far as an agenda item goes, I would like to have either a resolution or an understanding, a consensus that we're going to refer to the project, the 19 acres at the casino as our oceanfront park by name, rather than a casino complex, just for marketing purposes and the recognition that it is a park and that it has to be used as a park. And that's, as far as the agenda goes, I thought we had an understanding that we individually could put items on the agenda. But if we're going to require the agenda review to okay agenda items, is that a change, or can we put that in writing that's the new process? So those are my issues for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so a couple follow-ups with the rent thing. The lack of housing and the lack of affordable rent is crazy. I was going to ask sort of along the same lines as you to see, because I know that New York City has rent control. Cities have rent control. I mean, does the city have the authority to say you can't raise rent, even on a temporary basis, whatever, you can't raise rent? I mean, I'm getting, feedback from people whose landlords are doubling the rent. A little old lady calls me, I'm out, I'm on the street, I don't know what to do.
Price gouging.
I'm hearing the same thing, Madam Mayor.
Right, so I'm very concerned about it. And I would ask, is there a city attorney here tonight, anyone?
Christie is.
She's on by Zoom.
Oh, she didn't come, what?
She's on by Zoom.
Zoom.
Oh, okay,
She's up there.
that's something I would like to ask, if everyone agrees that that's something that we would like her to, spend time is money to spend on to see if that's something we can do, because we're hurting. People are hurting
Yeah.
out there.
I give my approval.
Well, thank you. We have a consensus.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. I'm present. Yeah, I can do some research. My initial belief is it may be preempted by state, but I will look into it.
Right. I heard today on NPR, there's a podcast out there called, Taking Tallahassee, about how Tallahassee is trying to completely take our power away. And I'm going to find the podcast and but it's like the taking of Tallahassee, or Tallahassee taking, and it sounded like exactly what we're fighting against as we go up to Tallahassee when we go up there in February. The L&M project is, thorn in my side. It's, and I know that we've worked with staff a little bit and Joan, and I asked, we had a study done about, structure. I don't know what happened with that study, but I really want to know this, because my big beef was when they bought the properties, they evicted everybody. I've been very public about that. That's my biggest complaint, that they bought the properties, they let people. So I want to know when we can move people back in. I want to know what condition those properties are in between now and then, between then and now, actually, that would prevent us from occupying those buildings. And if the fact is that we have let them rot to the point that they're uninhabitable, then that's a problem. So, and I've not ever said it quite that strongly, but I don't hear anything back, and I really want people to move in there. It's my neighborhood, it's our downtown, and a black hole has been created, and now homeless people are moving in. So,
And Madam Mayor, I couldn't agree with you more.
thank you. I see your light is on. Those are my comments. Okay, what, Mr.
Well, I didn't know whether you were going to ask for a vote or the consensus, but in my opinion, that would be money poorly spent and asking for a problem that has already been created, and by putting people in there to live for who knows how long, is not the right thing to do financially for the city. We're spending
What I'm asking for,
$100,000.
if you listen carefully to what I said, I'm asking for staff to assess when that can happen, what it would take for that to happen. That's a simple question. There were people living in those buildings. And what has happened in the past 2 or 3 years that prevents that from happening now? And I want an answer to that question. Because we have no plan right now for L&M, and there's a lot, those are many, many little housing units,
But we
okay?
spent in excess of $20,000 to assess the.
Which was in not what we had asked for, unfortunately. So
We're not in.
I'm really just trying to give my comments.
Okay, well, I don't want us to go off.
I want the staff, we have building inspectors, we have electrical inspectors, we have plumbing inspectors. They can go in and they can say, this place is trashed, you can't flush the toilets. Or this eaten by termites or something. I'm not asking for a professional thing. I just want to know if when I go to look to buy a little house for a rental, if I do that, I go, what kind of shape is this house in? What do I have to do to get it rented?
And I think, Madam Mayor, to put a specific to your request to staff, not only is it inhabitable, but to give us a little bit of an idea. Hey, you're looking at $500 to get the toilet working, or you're looking at $20 to do, what would it take to get this going? If it takes $20,000 to fix one place that lets one person move in, okay, I'm agreeing with.
Right. I just want to know.
But let's have that information.
Yeah. I'm not looking for a study. I'm looking for some guy that knows how to flush a toilet to go in and say the toilet flushes.
We're not in the rental business.
Electricity is working.
We bought those
Exactly.
properties to develop.
And okay, Harmon, I'm not going to argue with you. They are sitting there empty. If we get a plan, if everybody meets on February 1st and says, we know what we're going to do with the L&M project, and here it is, and there's the financing. Well, maybe it's still going to be a year before you put a shovel in the dirt. We don't have an idea yet. I predict that if we don't do something, those buildings are going to sit there for the next 2 years, 3 years.
Well, we haven't heard from the consultant, and we won't for another year. We've already spent $109,000 to talk about this property. And I don't think we should go off in haste to become landlords.
Being a landlord's not that hard.
Madam Mayor?
Yep.
I like that. I just also forgot to add that as much as I love the fireworks during the 4th of July and during New Year's Eve and during Christmas, I really, really, really hate litter. I know that Green Acres has put forward a rule in their city that only the city can put off fireworks. I don't know if we want to think about that for the agenda review, but the litter is overwhelming 3 days after the activities.
That'd be hard.
Not to even talk about people with PTSD and dogs and cats and kids. And so I just want to put that out there.
Yep. And
I would certainly support, I'm not as concerned about the litter, although it's a very valid concern. I'm very concerned about the sound. I had lots of people, I know people with pets, happened to ours, people with PTSD, people with illnesses, and it doesn't get restricted to just the 3 holidays that the governor gave for fireworks. It goes on multiple days, and I would be in favor of increasing our regulation of it.
And I don't disagree with anybody, but I really, my question as a former prosecutor is try and enforce that. That's all. So one more thing about the appointments. You're correct, Mr. Robinson. We had decided last year to start in January as appointments come up to do it in a more democratic way. What I'd asked to do is to get an assessment from the clerk, I guess, what vacancies currently exist and what are coming up in the next month or two that we could do a couple months together and have people apply and the interview process like we had for the education committee. So that's, I would ask.
Have we put on the agenda somewhere that we're going to reform formally our process and to set a date to start doing those interviews?
Well, that's what we're talking about right now.
We did ask at the last agenda review meeting to look at that old resolution.
Right, thank you. So So we are working in that, and I would ask, I guess, Christie to take another look at that. The old resolution and see how we can change it.
Yes, yes, Madam Mayor. We've actually, I believe, and Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, I think on the, we've been working behind the scenes to revise the ordinance for that process. And we have a draft that we're working through staff just to make sure that we've caught every area in the code where our advisory boards are mentioned, but it is being worked on. Changing that ordinance is the first step.
Thank you.
Can we say when?
When? Yes, I don't think it's going to be ready for the second meeting in January, probably the first meeting in February.
Thank you. Okay, let me get back on script here. Public participation of non-agenda items and consent agenda. We've already pulled over consent. Todd Townsend.
Everybody, good to see you all.
Happy New Year.
Hope everybody's rocking a new year. Right? Party. So you all have copies of everything that I had sent up there.
Todd, what's your address?
My address is 502 South Jade Street, right here in Lakeville. And so you all have pictures of everything that I had sent out already.
Right.
So that's not what I wanted to talk about though, because it speaks for itself. And I know we have a meeting coming up considering talking about that itself. I want to talk about 6th Avenue South. Yet again, we keep on having terrible accidents because of those kickouts. Let's take those stupid kickouts out and put simple speed tables there so that cars are not thinking about, can I make it through here at top speed? Or we'd rather have them think, I need to worry about the undercarriage of my car. A lot of people are getting hurt on 6th Avenue. If you get out of your car and go look at those kickouts, you'll see them. They're just getting destroyed. All right. No car is made to run straight into by the wheels to run into a kickout like that. Cars are made to crunch up when they have accidents and roll and everything. We are seriously hurting people by having their wheels hit that kickout and they bounce up and then they bounce back down. It goes right to the neck. You've got to do something about that. Make the driver think about saving the undercarriage of their car rather than fitting through this really tight bad spots. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you all on the 26th.
Thank you, Todd.
Deanna Evans.
Hello, everyone.
I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
This
Okay.
is my first time here.
Well, welcome.
Bear with me.
You got 2 minutes,
I
3
just
minutes.
have a comment about the noise that I'm experienced in my neighborhood in 1407 South D Street in Lakewood. I have dealt with you and Captain Bear and many of the officers of PDSO, and we haven't really been getting any help. There's been some incidents for Christmas and New Year's with the noise. Christmas wasn't so bad, but New Year's Eve was horrible. My parents, my dad's on dialysis, a lot of elderly there. And the neighbors next door, 1411, and across the street, that's family. They had a live band from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock at night, a live band with speakers, the microphone, the drums, it was horrible. And I called PBS, well, they wanted any help. They said there was nothing they can do. It has to stay like that until 12 o'clock. I said, are you kidding me? So I came here, got the noise ordinance, I read it. They failed us 100% because we're not 150 feet. I'm 5 feet from the noise. No one slept in the neighborhood. I went around and no one slept. We lost 2 good neighbors because of the noise. The people that are moving in the neighborhood, and they're taking over and they have no respect for me or anyone else in that neighborhood.
What neighborhood association are you in?
This is 14.
Madam Mayor, there is an open case on this. There's several open code cases
Okay, good.
and cases with PBSO
All right.
in regards to addressing the owner.
Yeah,
the property, not the tenants. So there is things being done. It's just the process.
One of the ones she's talking about, this is one of the homes. This is from 2018 to 2021, from one residence, not one citation. And I'm holding on to this.
is that the history of that property?
Yes. And
311, 12,
14.
this
14.
this one is 1407 South East Street, which is a street in front of us. And they've just been a total nuisance to everyone. I also have Captain Deere is working on that. I also Mahoney, he's visited me and we talked about it.
Yeah.
They're great. He's told.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he's wonderful. But since we had got the two neighbors, it's just been horrible.
How long have they been there?
Not even a year,
Okay,
not even a year.
okay.
And it's just, New Year's Eve was just unacceptable.
Is it continual or is it with like a couple times a year?
This is the first time this ever happened, because they did the same thing, Christmas Eve. They just didn't have the live band, it was just loud music, and they just blasted it, they didn't care, and I and the other neighbors we constantly call on PBSO. I had one of the supervisors, I called in non-emergency and had them give me a call. I said, we have a live band outside our door, I can take 5 steps. They had this huge tent in the front yard, 35 chairs, everyone's sitting there like they're in church, speakers and.
It's a concert.
Exactly.
It was all throughout our neighborhood too.
What?
That was happening in our neighborhood too. It's the Hispanic way.
Yep,
It was horrible.
I'm sorry, ma'am, your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing that to,
Ms. Davis and Madam Mayor, I will send you all the correspondence in
Yeah.
regards to these addresses. Like I said, Captain Bear and Code have been trying to address the issues with the
Yeah.
teeth that we have.
okay, thank you very, very much. Okay, yeah. So do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Oh, we skipped the minutes, ma'am.
Oh, we did. Approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes as they are.
Okay, and do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now we go to the consent agenda. Thank you. Motion for the consent to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda with the amendment.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. thank you. All right, now public hearing. Let's get all this. It's a lot of paper. For those of us that are still tied to paper. Okay, public resolution 4-2022, approving historic preservation ad valorem tax exemption for property located at 1020 South Lakeside Drive. Do we have anything from staff on this?
Yes, Madam Mayor, this is Erin Sita for the record. Hi, so essentially this is a standard tax exemption. This is a part of a typical program for a historic preservation project. This is a single family structure located at 1020 South Lakeside Drive. They went through the entire process and they ended up with an approval by the HRPB for a completed work application in this September. This approval would then, if you all were to approve this resolution, then the resolution would be transmitted to the county, and the final determination of the tax exemption would be determined by the property appraiser's office and the tax collector.
If you could give us just a very short, some people might not understand what this all means, the taxes and how limited it is. Could you just quickly, 25 words or less, explain what this exemption is?
Sure. The exemption applies only to the increase in the assessed value that is the result of the improvements. So it's not about what the value is before the improvements. It's only about the value that resulted, that occurred as a result of the improvements. And so that can be deducted for a period of up to 10 years. And then the property is then reassessed at that time.
Great, thank you. I just think it's an odd little Commissioner Robinson, Vice Mayor Robinson.
I congratulate all the people that invest in their historic homes. But this is an example of inequity in government policy. If you have enough money to make those improvements, we incentivize not paying taxes. We don't incentivize anybody who is struggling to add an air conditioning unit or improve their insulation or windows. And I'm sorry that historic preservation doesn't have a policy to address I'm going to say sometimes onerous challenges that they present on property owners of historic property.
Thank you. Commissioner Maliga.
I too have those thoughts. My bigger concern is that there was a resident in the city of Lake Worth Beach who took advantage of this and then turned around 4 years later and sold his house for a nice big profit and left Lake Worth Beach. And I just feel, just like the vice mayor said, that it's very inequitable. I don't love this policy. I understand that we want to give people incentives, but it doesn't pay us to incentivize people to give them a tax break and then they turn around and make profit on the house and the city is lost.
Couldn't there be some sort of limit on that? Because I know with some, homes which have been helped with finances, you can't sell it, there's restrictions.
I don't think there is a restriction on this.
Right.
And I won't say the local person who was here who moved, but that person made upwards of $450,000 cash on their house and didn't pay us a dime of taxes on the approved value. So I just feel that this is one of those things that needs to be reworked and looked at very, very closely with a magnifying glass, because I just don't think it's equitable. I don't think there's no recourse for the city.
Right.
And we shouldn't be the place where people come to make money, land bank, and then use us and move along without contributing to our society. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Stokes.
I also share the concerns with our Vice Mayor, Commissioner Maliga, and I have an additional concern when I was looking at this. I've, gone back and forth about this, but because we do care about preserving our historical structures, and that's important to us. And I think that's the spirit of why we allow this, is to help people make those costly renovations to save a building that might not otherwise be saved. That's my opinion. In this case, they added additional square footage onto their house and a brand new pool. And I can't support giving a tax break to new construction. Yeah, I can't, I'm sorry. The intention of this tax break is to preserve historical structure.
Windows, doors,
Not to
roofs.
incentivize new construction on historical structures. I think we need taxes. We should all want to pay our taxes. Other places that can be tax exempt choose to pay taxes anyways, because they know how important it is to running our city and the services that we provide.
So these guys would not pay any extra taxes on the pool or the
Value.
addition.
Right.
Here's my question, and I don't disagree with anything that's been said. Here's my question. These people, and I hope you're listening, Madam Attorney. These people have done this. Have these people done this improvement based on their expectation that this would be something that they would get? If we don't, they went through the, Aaron said, they've gone through the process. So I don't know. I don't disagree with what you're saying about, but I just wonder if it's one of those cases where this is where we find an issue and deal with it, but it's too late to deal with it this time. That's my question to our attorney.
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor. I think your question is along the lines of some of the development that the commission had to approve after being shortly elected into office, and that some of the development you didn't agree with because the regulations were put in place prior to you being elected to office. I believe the same sort of situation applies in this case, where this is part of the city's historic preservation process. And one of the benefits a property owner could obtain through the historic preservation process that's currently available in the city. Aaron can speak more to the specifics of what is required of the process. And I understand certainly the objection to not believing it's truly meeting the intent of what perhaps it should be. But like you said, this is something that is in effect right now in our code that we do offer under the historic program.
I mean, I'm looking at the ordinance, which was passed in 97, you know, the restoration, renovation and or improvement of historic properties. It doesn't say, you know, addition to or a pool. I mean, I don't see, I think we have to look at our language on this ordinance. I don't know where you're all at about this specific, Commissioner Robinson.
I make a motion to approve this under the, you know, understanding that we need to be consistent when people make commitments financially or otherwise, but with the understanding that we will work on a resolution that if the property is sold, the tax break doesn't go with the property at least.
And I also think that we should have a limit on what we're
In dollars.
do, right? I mean, a pool, it's not really an improvement to a historic house.
But moving
But
forward,
Hi.
I had my hand raised, but they're probably hard to see. I don't know who sees it,
Yeah.
but
Right.
could I ask just for some clarification from Aaron on the details of this one? I heard what the city attorney said, that probably the rules are in place, and I think Commissioner Robinson is suggesting that, and the mayor, you have too, that we can't change the rules on the fly, which I understand, but I would like to understand a little bit more. I see that the current assessed value is, taxable values assessed minus exemption is 600 and a quarter. And that their current taxes are about 15,000. Could you, Aaron, give us an idea of what the changes were that were made and a rough sense of what value that would change the assessed value?
So ultimately, that's not decided by city staff. That's
Right,
decided by the property appraiser and the tax collector. And basically what they do is they say, okay, this is your improvement value. Your improvement value would yield this much in an increase in taxable value. And then you get essentially your taxable value gets reduced to the level pre-improvement. So the initial taxable value prior to the improvement is retained.
No, I understand that part. What I'm looking for from you, since you folks presumably approved whatever the proposed changes, additions, pools, whatever, do you have a ballpark idea of what kind of money was spent doing that? Because that would give
They
us.
spent approximately $400,000 on the improvements. And that is not likely to be the exemption that they receive, in my understanding of things, because first of all, this property is homesteaded. So they're not going to see an increase in $400,000 in taxable value on the property. So it would be the
They've
taxable.
put 400,000 in between the pool and the addition on that order.
Yeah, the scope included a whole new tile roof, which is probably in itself probably about a $30,000 improvement. All new windows and doors, total renovation of the structure in addition, and then the pool.
Okay. All right, so I think we have a motion. Do we have a second? Oh, Commissioner Malik, I'm sorry.
My question is for the attorney. Is there any wording that we can add that, like with the CRA, when I bought my home as a first-time home buyer, I had to hold on to that property for 20 years. If I sold it, I couldn't sell it and make a profit and bank on that. I had to sell it to somebody who was a first-time home buyer in a certain category.
I think that's what we're asking her to.
Yeah. Is there anything in this language that says that?
Yes, I believe there is. And Aaron, do you know offhand, I believe there's a covenant that they have to agree to as part of the tax. I was just looking at that specific issue in the ordinance itself. And I believe there is a covenant that they have to agree to. I think it has to do with maintaining the property for the time period of the exemption.
Not what we're looking for.
But there's no recourse if they don't.
Right.
Does the tax break go to the new owner though, or it just stops?
Stops.
Yeah.
I don't know, it stops.
The covenant has to be agreed upon, and it requires them to maintain the character of the property and the qualifying improvements during the period the exemption is granted. And it's binding on the current property owner and anyone that their successor and assigns. So So it's sort of a maintenance covenant. It's not necessarily that they will own the property for that duration. It's more of they'll maintain the improvements.
Okay, well,
It's my understanding as well that if the property then sells for a significant amount of money more, that the initial, that the tax exemption for the improvement retains, but that the new value is assessed based on the sale. So it's only for the exemption is again only for the assessed value. It wouldn't necessarily impact the value related to the sale.
Well, but if and this is a long conversation on this, but if it runs with the land to the heirs and successors of the current owners, then that tax break would continue. So here's what I think we need to do.
I will second
Okay,
Mr. Robinson's
Okay.
motion.
Yeah.
With the knowing that we need to look deep into this.
right. There's a few things, and do I have a vote? Do I have a,
I second it because these people went into the program thinking they were getting this, and I understand that, but we need to do our due diligence.
all in favor?
I
Aye.
Nay.
Okay, Kim says nay. And
I didn't hear Chris. What did Chris?
yeah, so Chris, did you go ahead?
I was a muted nay. I'm
Uh,
now a muted nay.
Okay, so it's 3-2. Passes 3-2. But I think I think we're very strong about the fact that we need to look into this to see what, how does it convey to the next person? What is covered? I think
Is there a recourse if they sell?
And
Right.
recourse. If there is a more, I don't think the spirit of the historic preservation was to put your pool in. It was like to make the windows better and that sort of thing. Because you're Robinson before, I saw you. I'm just turning my head.
With, I understand that we're talking about the tax benefit. I would also like historic preservation to create some sort of a program for financing or benefit to less.
Historic preservation do that.
Probably part of the conservation program.
Tax
we're working on.
incentives. I'm asking them to be creative in funding improvements for people who need help.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It's
New business. On to new business. This one is, the first one is a resolution 1/1/2022. It's always first. Updating the travel policy. And I think a few of us have some questions and some comments about it. So I know I did. And I don't know where to start.
If I may,
Please.
I think we have staff. Are you here present for the? Wonderful.
Oh,
We do have
okay.
staff here who can share the draft policy, but I did want to open up this issue concerning the proposed draft travel policy. And then, as you mentioned, Madam Mayor, that you had a few questions. And as you know, this was my first reading upon joining the labor team.
Yeah.
And so in reviewing the policy, of course, I had a few questions too. The staff met to discuss those questions and also making sure that we had a comprehensive policy, that we were trying to leave no stone unturned and making sure it was thorough. And so with that, right now, as it's presented to you, is certainly a rough draft. And so we welcome your feedback at this point, not necessarily requesting action, as I have found that you do need to do some smoothing out of the policy.
Thank you.
So
Ma'am.
if we can get your comments and policy, but I definitely want staff to give you the background where we are and what we have before you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hello.
For the record, Andre McAdam, Controller. So the policy was drafted to update a much older version of the travel policy. There were some revisions or changes that need to be made to bring it into the new century.
Century.
There are a couple items that needed to be changed because if we continued it, it would either violate IRS guidelines or it would create administrative burden on the city. And so one of those key items that was changed was taking the per diem, because should you receive a per diem, if you don't spend the total amount of per diem, then the remaining value is taxable income. So then we have to chase you down and get your W-2.
So a per diem would be like, instead of breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it would be like, here's a set amount for that day.
Right.
That's a per diem.
Right, I'm just trying to get some people understand.
Instead, it'll be a reimbursement that you will get. So you absolutely need to present
Keep those
receipts
receipts.
for anything that you do.
Do we get to charge you interest? No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Another key item in the first draft is, I've noticed, because all of the reimbursement requests come to my desk, I've noticed in some instances where the traveler may not have presented a tax exempt certificate, obviously
right.
doesn't pay taxes.
Right.
So in the policy, and then I'm telling you because I'll be the one approving.
Sylvina keeps a very short leash on us when we travel.
If you don't have receipts, I'm gonna.
We're not gonna get it.
Trust me, we have receipts.
All right. And then there are a couple of other items that were new that just came up. What I think I'll do is let you give your, go into your questions and give your comments, and if they are addressed, I'll elaborate.
Okay. Who wants to start?
I have questions. I don't know when I go.
Well, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Somebody's gonna start.
Go ahead, Kim. Take it away.
All right, I did have a question about, mostly around the transportation. So, well, first, before this, I do want to ask for clarification with the tax exempt. I think I noticed somewhere it said that they might not get reimbursed, or they'll have to pay that difference, and I'm just hoping, like the mayor said, Sylvina, make sure that we're staying on top of it. I hate that for that burden to fall on me because I just didn't know, or it slipped through the cracks. So are the immediate supervisors of the person who's doing the traveling responsible for making sure that that person knows what's available and like how everything goes? Because I would just hate for somebody to not like to book a room not knowing that they need to do this tax exempt. So I just want to make sure it's very clear that whoever's.
When we get that piece of paper when we travel, which is the tax exempt status.
You'll have a certificate, but just to point out the section on page 2, it gives a hierarchy of approval. So for staff traveling, the department director would be the one to approve.
So they should catch that if the employee accidentally, forgot or wasn't aware.
And they should know ahead of time as well, because the information has to be presented to the department director for them to get it approved before the travel takes place.
Okay.
And then, yes, as a second level, once the information comes after the travel or the event or whatever the case is, the information goes back to the department director for approval before it comes to me for final approval.
Okay, great.
It's just a follow-up when I do that with the.
I don't see your light on. I'm just,
Well,
I'm joking.
Don't need a light.
Totally kidding. We haven't been here in a couple weeks. I'm feeling frisky. I'm feeling frisky.
Getting back into the group. For a hotel, but if I go out to dinner and there's tax, do I have to, are you asking us to do that for a dinner? Or will you reimburse me if I?
From the tax exempt certificate.
At a restaurant?
At the restaurant.
Yeah.
Betty, we are not going to do that. So just.
We're not. I don't even ask for the money back when I
Stop.
get out, so it doesn't really
Like,
matter.
stop. We are not going to do that.
Dinner anyway, I might as well pay for it myself. All right, well, that's good to know.
Yeah, it seems like we could all use some training on.
And tips, we're
anyone
not allowed to tip
before,
people?
Right. Or you can, but it's
You gotta pay your own.
pocket.
So now you want us to be cheap.
Oh,
Right.
you can do it. We won't, but you can.
Right. I had a question about the bag fees unless not included in ticket price. And I just know depending on which, I haven't traveled in a long time, but depending on which, if it's Delta versus Spirit, like they're all over the map and some even charge for a carry-on now.
Right.
And
Spirit,
I just
don't fly
feel
Spirit.
like it's almost unavoidable to have to pay a bag fee. If you're like the oversized bag fees, yeah, sure. If really need to carry it so much.
Page 3.
Thank you.
Yeah, page 3.
Okay.
So
3/4 of the way down under
I
transportation.
don't want to put an undue burden on people when it's really unavoidable.
Yeah,
I agree.
I face it.
I had that highlighted too.
It used to be the way, you got a ticket, you brought a suitcase, but it's really not that way anymore.
Oh, some airlines charge
Andre?
$30 for a carry-on.
I think it includes covering the fees, back fees.
It says.
It says that.
Not including them, I can buy a ticket, and then if I want to bring a suitcase, I just looked for a trip, it's another $30. It's for carry-on even, it was like $30. So I don't think that I should have to pay $60 to bring my clothes on a trip.
It does say when traveling by air, the city shall not pay for.
The language, it says bag fees unless not included in the ticket price.
But-
So
So you have to add the bag on when you purchase the flight, you add the bag on and then that
You
total.
can't do that until you check in.
No, yes, you can. You pay it.
No,
Oh, yeah.
some when you do, you can.
You take it when you buy your
Before you get
ticket.
to your final checkout, you can select, which
Extras.
option you want to go with, and it'll include the bag fee or not. But we can clean up the language so it makes it.
Yeah, I mean, if it's, I'm getting on the plane, I'm bringing my suitcase. The next one, I mean, certainly makes sense.
Right.
Um,
The last part I had about was, I was just getting a little confused about the personal car.
mhm.
So if an employee receives a monthly vehicle stipend, they must use their personal car unless going out of state. And I think, if they want to, I just feel that could use some clarification.
Yeah.
If they don't want to use their personal car, then they're responsible for whatever cost for the alternate. Like if they want to take a train instead, then they're paying for the train ticket. And then, so
But then that changes your mode of transportation if you're going by train. So if you are taking if you have a monthly stipend
yeah.
and you take a car, then you don't get the reimbursement because you're getting a stipend.
And we don't get
But
mileage.
You don't get mileage.
Right.
So, but if you change your mode of transportation, you're on a train, then you're not taking your personal.
But if we
Okay,
get,
so
like, we
here-
get, okay,
Under transportation, it seems very general. It says if employee receives a monthly vehicle stipend, they must use their personal car.
You and I have the exact same thing highlighted. That's
The
so funny.
request is for out-of-state travel.
Right.
And
So-
to me, if you get a vehicle stipend, you should, be,
If you're in the state of Florida and you get a stipend, you're driving. You can't fly, you can't train, you can't
That's not
anything.
right.
That's what this says, basically.
Right, the idea is that if you're traveling within the state, it's within driving distance, with the exception of Tallahassee, that is just added. But if you're driving within the state, like you're traveling, within the state, like near to Orlando, or Daytona Beach or whatever, then the expectation is that you drive, it's not gonna fly.
and if we get a stipend, we can't ask for a city car to go.
Right.
okay. Well, and then, so after that, it says for those employees that do not receive a vehicle stipend, they can either use a city vehicle or public transportation. And then the third bullet after that is where I was, nope, the fourth one after that. If the personal car is used, so my guess is the way this is written, it makes it seem like the only person who can use a personal car is somebody who's getting a vehicle stipend.
Right.
Because if you're not getting a vehicle stipend, you either use a city vehicle or public transportation.
Or Betty could use her car and then, but she gets a stipend. But if Betty was Andre and Andre didn't get a stipend, he could use his own car and then submit for mileage reimbursement.
This bullet says for those employees that do not receive a vehicle stipend, they can either use a city vehicle or public transportation. So
Yeah,
is
it
that
does
like
say
an
that.
additional option? It just doesn't speak, it doesn't say.
It doesn't flow.
City, yeah.
Yeah, so then I just want to make sure under the bullet where it says if a personal car is used, reimbursable legal IRS stuff.
Yeah, why
And,
can't-
but that's not for people who have a vehicle stipend. That's for the people who don't have a vehicle stipend that are using their personal car.
it should really read.
Sorry, just that
No,
cluster
I mean,
right
here's,
there.
all right, but it should, I think it should read, they did that, people that don't get a stipend, they can either use a city vehicle, public transportation, or receive mileage for their own personal vehicle.
Yeah,
Yeah, what we do is we can add the extra language in there so it cleans up the personal vehicle piece because it's written under the assumption that you have the understanding of what you get when you use your personal vehicle, but we can add the language. here
Yeah,
so
because it doesn't say
it's
it.
better, it's a little bit.
yeah. So those were my questions. I just wanted to make sure that it was very clear. So if we are all gone and the new people come in, they can pick this up and they know exactly what it means and says.
Sarah?
No, we're all on the same, we're on the exact same page.
Okay,
I want to thank the city manager for at least presenting a draft and not something to vote on.
right. Okay, I gotta look at Class A, Class B, Class C. Class A is continuous travel exceeding 24 hours away from the city. Class B, continuous travel up to 24 hours away from the city and requires overnight lodging. Now, A is confusing to me because continuous travel exceeding 24 hours away from the city with, I need a place to sleep.
You're not gonna sleep in your car? on now.
I mean, I don't understand how continuous travel over 20, exceeding 24 hours would not need lodging unless I have a friend in the town and I can say, can I crash at your place?
You know, you're popular, you got some.
I know, but not everybody can.
It's your second and third home that you have, buddy. That's where you're staying.
That's what it is. So that didn't make any sense.
I think Class A and B definitions might be switched. If you,
I don't think we need it. What's A? I'm asking the universe,
I tried to do the math on the map and I'm.
what 24 hours doesn't need a lodging?
And what are we doing for 24 hours? That's what I really want to know.
Well, that's not something I'm gonna ask.
shouldn't Class A continuous travel under 24 hours away from the city? Then you don't, that's the non-lodging
Well,
category.
that's C. Then you go for C.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I believe the interpretation for Class A is the assumption that it will involve overnight travel. So Class B is just including that to clarify that, say, you're going to leave in the afternoon at 4 p.m., you got to stay overnight, but you'll be back before 4 p.m. the next day.
But you need lodging.
Yeah.
I mean, A makes
So
no
the
sense to me.
assumption-
I don't think
I
that we
think-
need A.
Right. I think the assumption is Class A assumes you're going to stay there overnight.
But then why do we have, I'm sorry.
Then what's the difference between
A and B.
So B would be, I leave at 4 p.m. on Monday to go to Tallahassee. I spend the night there and I come back before noon on Tuesday. So it's less than 24 hours, but I stay up in Tallahassee.
But that's what A says.
No,
It's
A is
exceeding,
exceeding.
Trevor. I think this is, I think it's silly. I think that we just,
We'll revisit that.
Thank you.
Because I've seen policies where the intent is based on the miles that you're away from your home base.
well, we go there.
So if you, for instance, if you travel more than 70 miles to an event or a conference meeting, and so forth, that justifies an overnight stay. And so therefore, you're allowed to stay overnight. But if the travel is less than 70, or whatever number you decide, but if it's less than a certain mileage, there's no justification for overnight stay.
I think that's.
But that's somewhere in here. So I'm just looking for it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's actually kind of a separate.
So Class A is if you travel for more than 24 hours, it's just looking, yes, you get overnight lodging.
But then it should say, I mean, why would it not?
Right, I think it was another thing that was implied, but maybe you could clarify. So that's the way I read it, is Class A, yep, you get lodging, and then anything less than 24 hours is split into two parts. Right, so you have more than 24 hours lodging, yes, less than 24 hours, if it's overnight, yes, lodging, if it's not overnight. Or within, there's like hours that it's like within, if it's like if there's an event up till 6 p.m. that night, you get lodging. Or
I
if you have
think if-
10 a.m. you
There
get
was that
lodging
thing
the night
about the
before.
10 a.m., right? You have to get
Yeah.
lodging the
So
night
there,
before.
it's clarified later down, I think.
I'm looking for it and I don't see it again.
Maybe we can move it around.
I think if Class A,
It's 3, page, top of page, bottom page 2, top page 3. Wait a minute. One-day conferences within 70 miles of the point of origin, lodging will not be provided. One-day conferences.
One day.
Conferences exceeding 1 day beyond 50 miles from the employer's point of origin, the employer residence lodging will be provided.
but it might be your car.
It's gonna be our car. We get a stipend.
You're sleeping in it.
And we're sleeping in it. I'm glad I have a CRV.
I might go buy an RV.
So the 50 miles and the 70 miles, I wasn't really sure the one-day conference or the 70 miles.
We'll look at that section.
Okay,
Concerning the 24.
and kind of bring it back and get a little feedback from us. Okay, thanks. I don't want to belabor the point. Andre, once again, thank you. for your work.
And am I correct, Andre, in assuming that part of the motivation for doing this was that there was some issue with the Inspector General at the county level a while back, that our procedures weren't altogether copacetic, and this is partly motivated by trying to resolve that? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. The previous policy wasn't as clear, left a lot of room for
Us to make mistakes.
not clear interpretation. The intent is to make things a little bit more.
Well, this
plain.
was a good start.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for that.
I just have one thing. I don't know who has stayed at a hotel lately, but when the mayor and I were away at the conference, and even Kim, we went and had lunch. And I think we had a salad with chicken, and the bill was $19.
Yeah.
Before taxes, before a drink, because you're at a hotel, you're in a conference center, you can't go anywhere, you're landlocked. So
Is there?
I
an
just, it
IRS
says
limit?
$15 for breakfast and 15 for lunch. I mean, you literally get 45 minutes half the time, and you're landlocked to this hotel. So I don't know if we should look at maybe upping that to 20 for lunch.
Is this true, like a traditional number? Me personally, I've always kind of viewed the per diem, like breakfast, lunch, dinner things as like helping to offset. I'm gonna eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner if I'm at home or if I'm at a
Right.
conference.
I'm not saying for us, I'm saying for the other employees that are out there. You know, I'm saying for other employees who are out there who might not be in the same financial situation we are.
I know, I just figured that amount, if it's gonna cost them more at a conference, it offsets that. I don't, and it's so hard. It depends on
Really,
where you're
it'll just
going.
depend on the
I mean,
intent.
$25 for dinner is even a stretch.
We can
That's what I'm
talk
saying. I
about
mean-
the value and lay out what we intend to have covered with lunch if we want to make
We
it.
have to.
We want to just have it offset and an overall meal cost, or we want to attempt to cover the meal cost. We can talk about that and come up with.
Because I know that I got an instant oatmeal, a banana, and I think a protein bar, and my bill was like $19 before taxes.
It's crazy.
Well,
At the walk-up.
Everybody to stay at the Ritz.
We were at the Ritz.
Boy, there was one place to eat, and it was the walk-up marketplace. I mean, and literally I was like, I had to go to my room and get hot water to make the oatmeal. I wasn't even like served. And I know there are other employees who may travel that I would just like them to be able to have healthy food options and not have to eat at McDonald's 2 for $1, you know, Big Macs or whatever.
Difference, the region that you travel.
Mhm.
makes a difference.
I mean, I think that that needs to be notched up because we want people to eat healthy. We don't want them to make bad food decisions, and we don't want them to be out of pocket any money for that. That's all.
2 quick things. I have 2 more quick
Oh, I got
things. I'm sorry. If we have to use our personal car, of course, we get a stipend, unless they're requested for out-of-state travel. I'm gonna be so bold as to ask to include Tallahassee with that, because Tallahassee is essentially out of state. I
We
mean,
did say that. We said
Yeah.
are
including.
you including that? Okay, great.
New language includes.
Okay, great. And then the other thing was has a board member ever had to go on a volunteer board member? I really was curious about that. Do we send our board members on trips?
Depends on your board. I can't speak for ours. I'm a member of the Police
Fab.
Department Pension Board for the
Right.
city of Boca.
Yeah,
And so if there's a conference for us to get certification or an annual conference, which we do have one in Orlando soon, then we're covered by the pension board itself, not the city. So I think it depends on your board.
I mean, I'm talking like the Historic Preservation Board, there's a conference in Orlando. I mean, we're not paying for that, right? That's volunteer.
Is that through
I think that would have to be through an approval process through the CM's office.
like the Department of Sustainability? Is that who?
I don't know about that. You'd probably be defined by that board, and obviously we have to come through.
When I say board, I mean the,
Madam Mayor, if I may.
yeah, hi there.
Oh, hello. He's got his hand up.
Historically, the city has not paid for advisory board members to go to any conferences. I can't even recall of an instance where there was a request. But also keep in mind, out-of-state travel, just in general, typically is restricted to department heads and city administration. It's very rare for out-of-state travel to conferences to happen for, lower level staff as well. But
Even
I'm just
in-state.
listening to some of the discussion there.
But in-state, that's my, I mean,
Yes. Go ahead.
Have we been paying for board members to do things in-state?
No, Madam Mayor, I'm not aware of the time that I've been with the city where we've paid for members to go to conferences in state or out of state.
So we could just execute that language then. If that's not something that we're willing to do.
That we're not willing.
Yeah.
Right, because there was a mention in the introduction about staff members. There's something in here about, not staff members, about board members and,
I mean, I would like to look into that more before taking out. It's there in case something happens. I think there was like an urban planning conference in Miami at one point. I don't know if there would ever be a reason
Maybe that would
in the
be city
future to want
manager
to do it,
discretion.
but it has to go through the proper channels. The
Right.
board can't just say, hey, we're doing this and you're paying for it.
Oh, that's fine. It was a question.
I think that there has to be language in the mayor and the city manager should sign off on that. That there should be a two-part approval for
We'll
that.
take the heat.
Well, keep in mind as you explore that idea, let me complicate it some for you.
Oh, thank
Well,
you.
isn't that what you're for?
All of our travel and training and conference fees are all budgeted a year in advance.
Right.
So if we're gonna open up that can of worms,
We're not,
We're not.
we're trying to.
okay,
Close.
then we'll, I'll be quiet then, but you
Thank
get
you.
my point.
Put your hand down.
Put your hand down. Okay, thank you very much, Andre. I appreciate it. So we'll be looking for some feedback from you guys before it gets on the agenda. Okay,
appreciate the team's work.
absolutely. To only be stand up in front of us and get questioned and criticized. Moving right along.
Not even jury duty.
It's not
I'm
even-
sorry, Madam Mayor, I have a question for the city attorney
Yes,
about this. Since this is on the agenda and is supposed to be voted on, shouldn't there be some sort of vote or tabled or motion to bring it back or something?
Well, the way this was prepared was for the resolution to be approved by the city commission. That really just sets forth the 3 different classes of travel. Then to adopt this policy as the implementing guidelines for the travel policy, with the city manager giving authorization to amend it as needed. If you want, we can make a motion to continue it to the next meeting to bring back the changes that have been discussed, and then it could be voted on officially.
yeah, I think that's what we're talking about.
I'll make a motion.
Motion to table it, or
I
what?
would say motion to amend with the changes we talked
So
about.
much confusion to amend. We'll bring it back at the next meeting.
I think a motion to table it and bring it back.
At the January 18th meeting?
Mhm.
Okay.
If that's time enough.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Your moment has arrived.
I'll second it.
After all
Did you
this-
make that motion? I second.
Oh, okay, all in
I'm
favor?
sorry, who made the motion?
Herman,
Okay, I don't think, because the packet's being printed Thursday, I think probably February 1st would be more likely, in my opinion.
Melissa, we can add on.
All right, sounds good.
thank you. Now is new business B.
Yay.
And this is the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program application for the South Palm Park Resilience Project. And boy, do you guys need it.
Yes, we do.
We have a public comment, so let's let Ms. Grasson come up. Madam Clerk, do you have any public comments?
Is this it?
I have 3, Madam Mayor.
Oh, okay. So, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Cheryl Rashford. I am the current president for South Palm Park Neighborhood Association, and I'm here speaking for the neighborhood. We're so glad that you're doing this. We're so glad that you're moving forward on this, because the neighbors in the south end, the neighbors surrounding the park area, because the park area does get flooded. It encroaches across the street to those homes as well. And again, all along South Lakeside Drive with the flooding, and also on South Palm Way. So it's not just affecting that one area any longer, it's in fact affecting the entire neighborhood. So we're very thankful that you were doing this. The board has asked for me to come here tonight and say thank you. And if you need our support at any point in time, especially with emergency management, we're glad to assist.
Yeah, and you know how to do it.
Yeah. So we just want to thank you. That's why I'm here tonight.
Oh, thank you for waiting around for so long.
Hey, it's
Really?
a good project. We're glad that it's going forward.
Yeah. Teresa sent me some
I
photographs.
know she did.
I was like, oh, good Lord.
Yeah, it's been bad.
And then, and I've been reading articles. I mean, this is happening all over. Every coastal city is experiencing this.
It's really bad. And the neighbors, especially on 18th Avenue
Oh, it's
South,
horrible.
they get inundated when it's not a king tide.
Right.
When we have the severe rains.
Right.
And there's been discussion from those neighbors, which is probably a couple of the comment cards you have coming, about them leaving the neighborhood because of that.
Oh, I get it.
And or suing the city.
Well,
So I know, just Just to let you know,
God.
I know you're working on it,
We are.
and they know you're working on it,
Yeah,
especially now since this was there, and I made sure they all knew about it.
thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that,
We want to
Cheryl.
thank you, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Our best regards to your other half.
I will. He was supposed to bring me tonight, but he decided he's gonna sit home and watch television. so.
All right.
I'd be watching you right
That's the
now.
kind of guy he is.
Yeah, well,
Hmm.
after all these years, it's okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk, let's hear the other public comments.
Okay, Madam Mayor, the first is from Shane Regan, 535 South Palmway. While 100% in support of the grant for addressing the flooding problem on 18th Street South, I would like to bring your attention to the serious flooding we receive at 6th Avenue South between Federal and South Palmway due to the excess runoff of water from the Pineapple and Cloister apartment blocks. This is a regular incident due to excess paved areas and not enough drainage. The water at times can be over 1 foot deep and is causing damage to all properties along the portion of street. Second comment is from Michael Blake, 606 South Palmway. I support resolution number 02-2022, but ask that it be expanded to include 6th Avenue South and South Palmway. This section of South Palm Park is prone to flooding and is in need of better drainage. The last comment is from Anthony Segrich, 601 South Palmway. Hello, I live on the corner of South Palmway and 6th Avenue South in South Palm Park. I'm 100% for resolution 02-2022 and think it is a great step in the right direction. I would like to also point out that there were several other areas in South Palm Park suffering from flooding unrelated to the 18th Street issue. 6th Avenue South routinely floods. A few months back, they helped the situation by cleaning the drains and investigating some issues, but the problem still persists. Our home was flooded with 8 inches of water this past heavy storm rainfall. This was in spite of us having sandbags and a new solid fence the length of our property. The floodwaters coming from Federal and the townhomes forced their way under the fence and flooded our home yet again. I would ask the commission to also look into measures and grant projects to alleviate the flooding on 6th Avenue South. Each major rainfall continues to damage and flood our historic home, and we are 12 feet above sea level. It is a clear city drainage issue that is destroying our historic home and presenting mold and other health issues. Thank you. That's the end of the comments, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And I just have one response. Everyone sitting up here is really well aware of the flooding problems that we have in the
Yes,
city,
we are.
north and south. We have a project going on in the north, and one of the things that we are going to be talking about at some point in the spans of time, is the ARPA funds. And one of the things that the ARPA fund specifically talks about is mitigation for flooding and that sort of thing. So thank you for your concerns. We understand them, and we're doing the best we can. Thank you. You may go home now.
Thank you.
You're dismissed.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Madam Mayor,
Yep.
I had my hand up again.
Sorry. You don't show up on the screen when you, okay. Now
Yeah, I don't know what's a good mechanism. I don't want to interrupt rudely either. But I certainly support the grant application as well. However, I do have a bit of a concern, even though many of these projects that we're dealing with, as you mentioned, both north and south along the intercoastal, are getting some grant funding. They usually do have a city in kind or contribution, cash contribution. And of course, we want to do something about it. But I guess the point that I'd like to make is that sea level rise is going to continue, and it's not going to be just outside of Lake Worth. So what happens when we raise something in one area, if all the other areas aren't raised, sooner or later, the same problem comes around the corner. And so it needs to be something that we work regionally and make sure that we are very active with the 4-county climate change compact, their recommendations. That's one piece. The other concern that I have a little bit is one of equity, that we will be spending quite substantial sums along for things that are close to the intercoastal, whereas there will be climate change related problems that affect other parts of the city. Probably many of us are already aware that some of the new artist loft areas near F Street flood with some regularity. How do we, and this is not an issue for staff really, they deal with the technical aspects, but at a policy level, how do we as policymakers ensure that we are equitably dealing with the different parts of the city? I don't necessarily have answers, but I would like us to keep that in mind as we address these things.
Thank you.
Well, I do believe that some of the grants are very precise on where the money has to be spent. So I think that that's, you know, if there's free money, we need to go for it. But I hear what you're saying loud and clear,
Yeah.
Commissioner McVoy.
Okay, so do we have a motion in a second?
I did make a motion, yes, ma'am.
Do we have a second? Commissioner, Vice Mayor Robinson, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now we are at C, item C, which is an agreement with Siemens Energy for the purchase of 145 kV high voltage breakers. And I know Ed is listening, bated breath to talk about this, I think.
And Madam Mayor, for the record, at Liberty Electric Utility Director. Not sure, waiting with bated breath, but happy New Year to everybody.
Thank you.
This request is for high voltage breakers for the new canal switching station / substation. There's a number of breakers that we need. It was researched through a competitive and bid through a competitive process, and Siemens was the successful bidder. This will also allow us to have some spares because you don't want to have critical pieces of equipment that you don't have spare parts for or replacements for. So this would have spares as well.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? Oh, no, I have a light.
In regards to that, that was one of my questions, Mr. Liberty, is because things keep rising and prices are going up, what is the over and under that we purchase on these? Do we go over and under 10%?
These prices are, so the numbers that are used in this solicitation are locked in. So we generally budget at pretty close to what we expect the equipment to cost. And then we generally come in slightly under budget on some projects, rarely on other projects may come in slightly over budget.
I don't mean dollar figure. So let's say that you budgeted to buy 1,500 of these, but you think that prices are going up and you might have a little extra money. Do you buy an extra 200 if you can? So we're not going back and spending more money next year if you need more of these? Instead of coming in under budget, would it be smarter for us to buy these products now while they're still at a market where they're at, instead of watching the rate keep going up?
On occasion, I've done that in other companies where we've been in the massive construction projects where we expect to use a lot of the same thing on multi-billion-dollar project, for example. We don't have a lot of opportunity for that here. We can't get out too far ahead of our skis on this, on these types of things, because we don't know those subsequent projects will be approved to be executed. So we have to be careful. Although we've overbought in some areas in anticipation of building the project, but only when we know that the projects themselves are approved projects.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And in this case, you're buying 10 of them, and you mentioned you're buying several as spares. How many are actually going to be on? This is just a technical question I was curious about. I assume one for each of the lines coming in?
Well, you have them on each phase coming in, and then you have them at the breakers, at the transformers, and in various places in the yard. The yard is set up as what we call a ring or a ring bus, and then it's segmented by breakers in multiple places, so that you have the optionality to move power from line A or line B, and then anywhere around the ring to allow for maintenance. So it gives you a lot of redundancy in the ring. And then what you'll see in the subsequent item will be switches. Before and after the breakers, you also have a switch. The difference between a breaker and a switch is that the switch gives you the visible open. The breaker is in essence the device that you see. The larger device looks like a giant centipede or something like that to most people, but it's quite different. But there's at least generally buy one spare. We don't need many spares. One of the things that we've done over the years is tried to standardize, so we don't have to have spares of 3 or 4 or 5 different pieces of equipment. We can have fewer spares that we standardize across the fleet. That's the type of thing we've been doing. That's also very common in the industry. It also helps us if we ever get into a situation where we don't have enough spares, to help find it in the industry that somebody else nearby might have one that we can borrow. And
Yeah.
replace it.
All good sounding choices.
Thank you. So do I have? Okay, do you have a motion in a second?
I didn't motion.
Do you have a motion to approve?
Second,
Okay. Commissioner Robinson, did you make the motion? Thank you. And Commissioner McFoy, you seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next up is the agreement for goods and services of Southern States LLC for the purchase of 138 kV switches, as Mr. Liberty just mentioned. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Liberty.
You're welcome, Madam Mayor.
How are you feeling? Feeling good these days?
Oh, feeling great, feeling great.
Glad to hear.
Minor cold symptoms and a negative result, negative test result. So
All
that's-
right,
that's-
very good. Thank you. That's good to hear.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I just wanted to highlight something for the benefit of the commission and the public. Tonight capped the conclusion of a large effort to get our pole attachment agreements in order as a city. And when we began this effort, we had a 5-year projected revenue of $285,000. With tonight's approval, which occurred during the consent agenda, that number moved from 285 to a total of $934,000. That was a combination of one-time settlements and increases in pole attachment charges over a 5-year period. So that's an important, very important source of revenue. And I want to do a shout out to the staff, Paul Nicholas, Brian King, and counsel at Torcivia, Gatto and et al., who worked with us on this to get this done. So thank you very much to that team. We brought a lot of value to the city, and that will continue going forward. So thank you for letting me take a moment to give them a shout out.
No, thank you very much for doing it. And I had a question. That was actually one of my questions is how often do we review the rent on those, the Comcast rents space on our poles and stuff? How often do we review the increase of that?
Sadly, it was many, many decades since we did it. Going forward, these things will be reviewed every 3 to 5 years or so. There's escalators in place and the ability for us to raise the rates. However, every 3 to 4 years or so, 5 years at the most, we'll be doing audits of who's attached to poles. That's one of the areas that we found to be the most egregious in terms of the number of attachments that have been made over many, many years to poles without the city being noticed. We also found that there were many poles that we had replaced during storms that were actually poles that belonged to other people. But we had replaced the poles and we had continued to pay them for attachments. This is something that went on for decades and decades and decades. Many of these agreements date back to the 1950s or 60s or 70s. So it all needed a cleanup. And that was part of why the gains are so large. But we will review these on a periodic basis. I'll point out too that all of the attachers help pay for the audit. So the audit is an intensive one and everybody attached shares in the cost of the audit.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Good negotiating.
Yep. He treats us well. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion second. We have a vote. We're done with that?
Yep.
What's going on? It's the COVID. I just blame it on the upcoming meetings.
Oh, no, E.
Oh, Madam Mayor, we're now,
Right, new business. There we go. Thank you. Back to
Please, ladies, real quick.
And Commissioner Robinson, you're the one that brought, do you want to take a break? Or just wait for, want to keep going?
We're close.
Okay, I know, this is early. All right, so let's get started. Commissioner Robinson, who is the first, whose staff is going to give us the?
Madam Mayor, I can give you an overview of this item.
Yeah, okay.
So this is on the third amendment to the economic development agreement that was entered with the MID. Just to give you a little background, we entered this economic development agreement with the MID prior to it being developed to assist in its development. One of the items that the city came up with as an incentive was a utility incentive fund. And what it was designed to do was to, based on the project parameters, estimate what the increase in revenue to utilities would be, and then calculate a reasonable rate of return should it receive that estimated increase in utility revenues. So we created a calculation that's in the original agreement that would allow for the MID to be eligible for a utility incentive fund of up to $163,000 and change. The way it was originally drafted in the agreement was after they obtained a CO, they could apply for that fund, but they would have to provide a bond to ensure that, because it would be paid based on the first 3 years of the utilities actually used at the project. The bond would be to ensure that they actually meet those projected revenues. Well, once they got their CO, we started talking about the bond requirement, and there were some issues with the bond. So what the MID asked was to, instead of having the city pay out the full amount at the time of CO, to amend the agreement to push the payment to happen at the end of the 3 years. So what this amendment does is really just an administrative change to the timing of this payment. So once they hit their 3-year mark after having their CO, they can apply to the city for this payment. The city will then have to do the calculation to see if they are entitled to the total amount, or if they didn't hit the projected revenue estimate based on the calculations in the original agreement, they would receive less than the total amount. So really, to just summarize, all this is doing is amending the timing of when the city would make that payment.
There's something in it for the developer, though. Okay, and part of one of my questions was, I mean, it could be more that they're asking. I mean, will it ever go above 163 and change?
No, ma'am. That's the max that they could receive. We will have to do the calculation at the end of the 3 years, but the city has already agreed in the economic development agreement with the MID to make this payment. It just is dependent on the actual calculations. But the 163 is the cap.
It's hard for me to imagine that the developer would want this to wait 3 years so he would get less money. I do.
No, what was supposed to happen was we were going to pay out the projected amount of the cap at 163 once they got their CO, but they had to provide a bond,
Which they don't have.
They don't have the bond.
which they don't have right now. So what they said was, okay, we'll go ahead and wait the 3 years. You calculate, we'll request at the end of 3 years, we'll calculate it and pay it. So it gets rid of them having to produce a bond, but the city's still obligated to make the payment.
It's basically a 3-year extension because they're not giving us the bond. We don't have to write the check.
Yeah.
Correct.
The bond. And we have a representative here, I believe.
Yes, Nick Rowe, 528 Greenway Drive, which you said is absolutely correct. It's just delaying the payment. We're not asking for any more money or anything like that.
And it's because you can't get the bond?
Well, we can, but the problem is that bonding companies is such a small amount of money for them. The fees are crazy and it doesn't make sense to do it. I mean, we'll do it if we have to, but obviously it makes more sense.
Well, as long as it's not a vehicle to get more money.
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's actually better for the city because you're delaying the payment.
Right.
So.
Well, but that day comes when that check has to be written.
That's right.
It's never easy.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Did you put your name on the?
Oh, I will. Here?
No, just said, did you say your name?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Okay,
My
thanks.
address.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Vice Mayor Robinson.
Just, I would ask Chrissy to explain the reason for initiating the bond requirement.
It was to ensure that once we hit that 3-year mark, that if we paid them the 163 initially and they didn't hit 163 at the 3-year mark, we could recoup what overage we paid.
The difference.
So that bond, what we're doing is lessening our insurance That's what the purpose of a bond.
Well, the bond would be if they paid us, if we paid them. We don't have to.
Upfront.
Right, we have no reason, we have nothing to, there's nothing to bond if we don't give them the money.
Correct.
Correct.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Wait.
Oh, wait, no, after Commissioner Maliga. She has her light on.
You know what, Mr. McBoy, you go right ahead. I'll wait.
Such a woman.
Go ahead.
Okay, either way, but I guess we're there. This one is for either somebody from the utilities or for Christie, I guess, and that is just a ballpark. Is the estimate, this 163 and change number, does that come from, that's what we expect the mid to generate in the total electric, water, sewer, and stormwater contributions to the city? So we're basically paying them back for what they're paying in, or how does that 163,000 relate to what we expect to get from them?
I don't know if Ed wants to talk to that, but we came up with a formula and it's in the original agreement and I can provide that to you. But what we did was we made a percentage based on a reasonable rate of return. So it is not everything that they've paid to us in the 3 years for utility revenue, but it's based on an increase in the city's overall utility revenue based on this development, and then a reasonable rate of return, a percentage of that we're returning to them to incentivize this development.
And Madam Mayor, I may add a little bit of detail to that from the electric utilities perspective. So it was tied to the assumption that absent incentives, this development may not happen at all. So what we did was we said we would be willing to, make an investment if they produce certain amounts of revenue. So we backed into what we thought that the revenues would be from electric sales to this facility over a multi-year period of time. And we backed out our cost of goods sold, if you will, right? So we're not paying out dollars that we paid to somebody else in wholesale energy. And then we used, I think the basis was a 3 to 4 year payback on our investment, if I remember correctly. And that's how we arrived at the utilities contribution towards this payment. And under the original concept, the developer would receive that money at the time of commercial operation, as council has suggested. And what this does is it says, instead of paying it up front,
right,
and then chasing the developer, maybe not a good word, but trying to get the difference back from the developer, if any, at the end of the 3 years. What this agreement, this amendment does is say they won't get the money at all until the end, and it'll be calculated based on the true number.
Okay.
Right. I understand the shift between the CO timing versus the 3 year timing. What I was looking to better understand was how does the amount that we're paying them ballpark relate to what they would be paying in, or what they will have paid by that point in the various utilities. The other question I would have for somebody, perhaps for the representative of the developer, is who pays the utilities for the folks that live in the mid? Does the mid pay those, or do the renters pay those?
At liberty for the utility, I don't know if you meant for me, but I know that we bill the tenants independently. Each unit is independently metered through the AMI system, and the tenants pay us directly.
We do pay quite a bit of common area maintenance and electricity and water. So we, and for obviously the sprinkler systems and things like that, water, sewer. So we do, the developer, us affiliated, we do pay into that as well.
Do you cover the water for the tenants, or they pay their own?
No,
water?
separately.
It's all separate. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Commissioner Malaghy had her line up first.
I wasn't here when this project was approved, but I will say, since coming on board in March, Jeff and Nick and Affiliated Development have been great community partners. They have sponsored everything from the toy giveaway to the school drive to the bicycle needs. And they just wrote a check for $1,000 to Compass as their youth organization for the end of the year. So I want to say thank you. That's truly what being an investor in this community is. It's being a community partner. So I want to say thank you for everything that you guys have been doing since I've been on board. And I think it's been good business.
We've had a very good relationship with you. Also, it's really nice when I drive up that way quite often. to see all the lights and the Christmas lights on the balconies, like people are living there. It's an active area for people to come and go. And it's kind of exciting to see that, which was an empty lot for, a long time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Robinson.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion for a second. We had, I heard a voice coming in there.
Yeah, that was me. I just wanted, we made a motion to approve the historic, the tax ad valorem thing on the addition. In this case, I'll certainly approve, and I have no problem with the switching of the date of the check going out from CO to 3 years. I have no problem with that at all. I do have a bit of a concern, and I would like us to make sure that we know what our policies are in the future. I have two-level concerns with this. One is this approach builds in an incentive for people to use more rather than less, which I don't think is what we really want to send for a message. And the other is that the people paying for the utilities are not the people getting the check back.
They are paying for utilities. They're paying for common area, water.
Yeah, that's
going
to be.
If they didn't build the building, we wouldn't have the money coming in from the tenant. So it's washing, you wash my back, I wash yours.
I would like us to look at this sort of approach more carefully in our future ones.
Okay, so do we have a motion? I'm having trouble tripping.
Mr. Herman sent
You made the second. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you, Nick.
investing in Lake Worth.
Absolutely.
Thank you for supporting Lake Worth Beach.
Yeah.
That's it.
Reports.
I know that. I'm like, what do we do now for the next 3
Go
hours?
home. Go home. Okay, so in the last upcoming meetings, we have,
City attorney report first.
where are they?
City attorney's reports. City
We
manager.
don't have them in the,
Somebody.
it's there, it's
Let's
not.
put a report in.
Do you have a
It's
city?
not part of the packet, Madam Mayor. It's just a verbal report.
Oh, actually, usually there's a line. Okay. Oh, here it is. Okay. City attorney, do you have a report?
I do not have a report. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Well, city manager, do you have a report?
Yes, Madam Mayor. And because it's 7.
He's gonna drag it out.
Here.
I feel like it's my obligation to maybe go to 9 o'clock. So I have a few.
She's like, if I have to be here, y'all gonna be here.
I was calling 8:30.
It's just gonna be right. But I do have a few announcements, and for the sake of time, and in celebration of the new year, I'll keep it brief.
Thank you.
Happy New Year to you all, and the staff, and to our residents. Few items, just to give you an update from the city manager's office. As you know, we're all facing this current wave of COVID pandemic. And I do want to express what the administration has done to ensure that we have continuity of service to our citizens and those doing business with the city of Lake Worth Beach, and also keeping our team, our staff safe. And so in keeping our staff safe ensures that we can continue to provide the proper services. So some departments have been allowing their staff to work at home so that we can have some separation and also make sure we have those able to keep the business going. And unfortunately, we have some team members who are at home sick, but some are troopers and they're also working while sick. So we have a wonderful, dedicated team of employees here, and I'm so privileged to be part of that. So just in general, business continues, Lake Worth Beach is open, and we're still working hard for everyone. And so everyone's a trooper. So I just want to say, those who are at home, get well soon. We miss you, and thank you for all that you do. We do want to say that the annex, the City Hall annex, as well as City Hall, is open. Our 1900 building, which is the Community Service and Customer Service, Community Sustainability Department,
is open. However, you may need to be buzzed in. So we just want to make sure that we monitor the number of people who come into the building to keep all persons safe and making sure this virus is spreading very fast and very contagious. So we want all those, safety is first. Safety is
Absolutely.
first in everything that we do. And so we assure that we can assist them in a healthy way.
And it seems like ringing a doorbell is not a big burden to help keep our people safe.
That's right. That's what it's all about.
Right.
That's first and foremost. We want everybody safe. And so I just wanted to give you that COVID update. Also, want to make sure everyone knows, please, 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 exercise safety. Let's adhere to the CDC guidelines and protocols, social distancing, washing your hands. Please stay home if you're sick. Take care of yourself. So. Also, I just want to remind the commission that we are to schedule several workshops at some point. And so I just wanted to highlight that, some of the issues that we, trying to find a little notepad, and I think I don't have it here. But there are several workshops that we've been talking about to schedule. I just want to remind you all that so that we can keep those to the forefront. They're very, important issues that you brought to our attention. One, about the ARPA funds. We need to sit and figure out how we're going to allocate those funds. We also want to do a workshop on visioning and talk about the vision, because we are working on and preparing the next budget process for this year, for the next budget year. So I want to tie in that budget with the priorities and also the vision of the commission. And so that's going to be very important. So you'll hear more from me on that. We're hoping to target around March or April to have that discussion in preparation for our budget process. So I just want to remind you of that. And so we'll be contacting you regarding your schedule around that time. We're preparing a tentative schedule for the budget process. And so you'll be getting that soon. We're making sure that we start early, build in proper timing so we can tie in the vision to the budget, as well as making sure that we have ample time to discuss and just really roll out a good budget for next year.
Yeah.
And I believe that's the end of my reports.
Well done, ma'am. So do I have a motion?
Well, I had a question about the upcoming meetings. We did not establish the CRA, or we did, but that didn't happen. So I just want confirmation that we're going to hear from the CRA in a joint meeting or a presentation.
Yeah, an update.
Didn't we just say January 18th?
18th of the first.
Yeah.
Okay. And the 26th work session, how much backup are we going to expect for that?
I'm sorry.
The work session for the beach, the oceanfront park work session, how much?
What backup are you looking for?
No, well, just how much backup material do we expect to continue this conversation, if any? I mean, I would like, if we think we need any, to give advance notice. If not, we can talk amongst ourselves.
We can't talk amongst ourselves.
Okay.
You're so cute when you say stuff like that.
My point. Okay.
I mean, we're talking, this is it. This is as much as you're getting out of us.
Well, I expected our finance department to provide us with, what reality is for us, how much money we have available to us and things like that. I think finance should be a part of that conversation.
Absolutely.
And we have a lot of reports and things that we've seen from the McAllis report and other things that we should be looking at.
And the CPZ drawings.
So
that we've already.
I think that's where to start, yeah.
I just want to give fair warning to staff if there was an expectation. Good.
I do think finance should lay it out on the table, what our current situation is, so that we don't just shoot for a $20 million project, we only have 4 million.
I agree.
Yeah, I would think
Oh,
fairly extensive backup would be helpful, both for us and for the public. Some overview of the finances of the Oceanfront Park as it stands, and a pretty clear idea of what kinds of things might be on the table, and what kind of things might not, as far as ITN approaches and what we might want to indicate to the broader public of, we would consider this to happen at the park, but we wouldn't consider that. Some kind of idea of what staff has in mind, I think would be helpful. I also have one request, which probably folks mentioned it during their commission comments. I think do it at that point. I had a request a number of months ago for some folks that are involved with youth swimming programs to do a presentation to the commission. And at that time, it was not really, for various reasons, didn't happen. Would it be all right to add that to the January 18 meeting so that that could happen before our workshop to give us some additional information? It would be a 10-minute, our usual kind of presentation.
I'm okay with that. I don't know.
When would that happen? At a meeting, at a regular meeting?
At looking at the agenda, the only time I can see would be the January 18 to make it happen before the 26th work session.
Mhm.
Unless you put it on the electric meeting, but I don't think that makes sense.
No, well, what is, what are you, so the agenda is coming out on Thursday, so what are you looking for to be added to?
A 10-minute presentation by a nonprofit that does work with youth on ocean and swimming activities that would be relevant to the potential pool.
What is what group is that? Because I've been approached by water group. I don't know. I don't see it as an emergency. I don't see it as an emergency to do an add-on. I mean, if this group was around, we could have talked about it,
the more information we have going into the meeting on the 26th to make a decision, I think the better off we are. And for 10 minutes, it's not an emergency. But would we consider it an emergency to hear 10 minutes of more information?
On the draft, it shows we already have 2 presentations. I mean, it's not like we're overloaded.
There are 5.
Five. We have 5.
Oh, so it's changed. Okay.
And,
5 presentations. That's 50 minutes right there.
Groups I would love to address for 10 minutes.
It's going to be well over an hour and a half because of who's presenting.
Yeah, that's.
They can certainly, Chris, what I would suggest as an alternative, they can certainly send us each individually stuff so that we have that background before we go into the meeting on the 26th. I don't know what the group is or what they're doing, but.
They're a nonprofit. They've worked, I believe, in all 3 counties. They've certainly worked in Broward and.
Well, I mean, you're not saying what they do, what they are. I mean, that would be
Who they are.
nonprofit is one thing, but what are they?
Maybe I didn't speak clearly. They work with disadvantaged youth to get them to the ocean, get them to pools near the ocean, and teach them swimming as well as.
What's the name of the group? It might be the same group I've been approached by.
That is good. One is, hold on, let me look in my stuff. It seems to me it has the name Ocean in it. I actually asked staff about doing this a long time ago, and it was kind of, at that point, not supported, and I didn't insist upon it, but maybe should have.
And that's my problem with the agenda issue, is that if a commissioner thinks an item should be on the agenda, shouldn't we have the right to put it on the agenda?
Well, I would agree with Commissioner Robinson on that, and I would certainly not be in favor of ixnaying somebody else's proposal just because I didn't think it was good. I think if any commissioner or mayor thinks that it's important for us to hear, I'm willing to go along with it. I believe they're called streetwaves.org.
That's not a good, but I mean, we have 5, we're gonna have an hour and a half on the 18th.
Oh, can they present on the 26th? If this meeting starts at 4, when do
No.
we expect it to finish?
I have no preference when. It could be the 18th. It could be added on to the electric or utilities meeting. It could be.
Or 10 minutes on the 26th?
But then.
That's okay with me too. I just think it would be
I
helpful.
don't agree with that. I don't agree. We're not having presentations on this is a workshop. We've got the CPC drawings. We've got things that we're bringing in to start to take. There'll be when other groups say, well, I want to make a presentation. I want to make a presentation.
That's not equitable.
And then we have a presentation, then we start talking about the presentation. We are trying to get this as clearly, as efficient as possible. This is, I mean, if this group, if what?
Then let's hear them on the
We
18th.
just talked about it's an hour and a half of presentations already. They can certainly send us, this is what we do. This is who we are, and we can take that into it. We can smart enough to take that into it with us on the 26th. Say, hey, what about this group?
Madam Mayor?
Madam Mayor, may I interject?
Yeah, I was
really
going to
quick?
say he wants to.
Only because I spoke with Commissioner McVoy a couple months ago about the group, and the group, it is a nonprofit. They provide swimming and surfing lessons and whatnot to disadvantaged youth. It's more of a programmatic conversation, and it's really not in line with the topic of the workshop on the oceanfront park on the 26th.
I agree.
It very is much worthy of a presentation to the commission that they'd like to, because historically we've been able to do that. But really, it's a programmatic question, not an investor, ITN, RFP, or anything related in that realm, which is what we're trying to flesh out at the workshop. Is what path do we want to go down, along with the financials and everything else. And then to the comment about elected officials adding items to an agenda, you so much can do so today if you want. Remember, when you guys came into office, you wanted to limit things just being added on without discussion, hence why we created the meeting. So I keep hearing the same thing come up and up and up, but it's at your privilege. You tell us, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Carmen, but you tell us what it is you want to do and how you want to do it.
I still agree with Juan, and in addition that you do have a procedure and policy concerning the development of the agenda and the process. So, and we try to uphold that.
And if this is programmatic, it's not going to affect, if there's a pool, I mean, we have the beaches there, they'll deal with, I mean, there's a group, and I'm just looking for their name, that does underprivileged surfing camps. It gets, surfing, which I think is great. But it has-
And I can handle that with Lauren Bennett administratively,
Right.
With them.
Well, can I ask what the other presentations are?
Get out of here, Nate.
Well, no, is that a fair question? Because I don't know what presentations are being presented that we've approved. Now we have to approve the presentations? Well,
No, the presentations on January 18th are PBSO quarterly presentation. School Board Representative Erica Whitfield's doing her educational update. And there was also a handful, there's another presentation that was moved from a canceled meeting in December, which was the Suits for Seniors. And then at the request of the commission, we have Brian Shields, who's going to do a presentation on, kind of an informational presentation on what's happening with the flooding. If you remember back a couple of weeks back, when we experienced the king tide on the full moon and a bunch of rain, everyone kind of had a bunch of questions of why. So we scheduled Mr. Shields to do a quick 10-minute. And then there's an anti-racism proclamation. Those 5 presentations probably will run over an hour, is what the clerk was trying to state.
Yeah, 10 minutes apiece, fine.
No, when has Captain Bear, with all due respect, ever done a 10-minute presentation? Same with Erica Whitfield. They're going to each be half an hour, and now you wanted me to add Joan Oliva on for the CRA, so that's another.
Melissa, let me handle this. Really quick on the CRA joint workshop. The CRA Commission joint workshop was scheduled for January 4th. It was postponed because CRA could not get all of their board members present. They had some scheduling conflicts. So we decided, and we also had the joint meeting scheduled very short thereafter. So instead of having her do a quarterly report on the 4th, and I think it was like 7 days later on the 11th, have a
Wouldn't have been
joint
quarterly
meeting.
report anyhow.
Well, we decided to cancel the quarterly report on the 4th and do the 11th. In between that decision, the 11th had to be rescheduled. So Savina's working with you guys and with Joan, and I think we're down to like 1 or 2 people left to finalize a date for the joint meeting. I can most certainly reach out to Joan and ask her if she would be available on the 18th and add another presentation to the 18th agenda, or we can try to schedule this joint meeting in the month of January, which is what we're shooting for, and have a joint meeting, and that whole quarterly report conversation and the conversation between the city, you guys and their body or their board can happen, kind of, 2 things at once. So it's not that CRA didn't want to do the quarterly report, just the scheduling conflict just kind of didn't work out. But again, we'll do however you want us to do it.
I would still like to reiterate my request for the thing. I hear the comment that it's programmatic. Was frustrated that it was shut down earlier. I would think it would help us in considering what we do at the beach to hear from folks with a lot of experience with this. But it's up to the pleasure of my colleagues.
Would anybody on the dais object to having these folks give us a call individually and talk to us about it? Do they have a website? We can learn other ways than the. I just don't see it happening on the 18th. So I invite them to contact us individually and give us an idea. So where are we?
The public deserves to know the value of our oceanfront park in every which way possible.
Well, yes. Okay, so do I have a motion to adjourn? From Commissioner Lega, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good evening.